Hello everyone, I'm Brophy1322 and welcome to another GTA fact-finding video where I'm going to be talking about which are the best wheels to use in a racing situation regardless of the car that you're driving. And if all you want from this video is the answer to the question, then that is as follows: it doesn't matter. For the vast majority of vehicles in GTA, it doesn't matter what wheels you have on, what tyre type you have on, you will get exactly the same performance and exactly the same handling characteristics from that car regardless of what you use. There's no difference in traction levels as well, so you're not going to get increased grip from any different tyres. There's just anything that you experience with that is simply a placebo effect. And for the vast majority of cars, the characteristics of the car will be exactly the same whether you're using sports wheels, whether you're using SUV wheels or off-road wheels. It makes no difference whatsoever. However, there are a small number of vehicles in GTA where this isn't the case, and I'm going to be showing the entirety of that list on the screen. It's only around, I think it's 18 vehicles, and basically these gain a benefit from having off-road wheels and also some of the other wheels that I'll explain later on. But these are the only vehicles where there is any kind of difference between any of the tyre types when you apply them. Every other vehicle that isn't in this list, there is absolutely no difference, and you can use any tyre, any wheel type that you want, and you will get exactly the same performance from the car. Now, quite a while ago, and this was back on old gen, I did some testing about this myself, and I tested various different things, and especially trying to figure out whether there were any traction differences between the types of wheels, and ultimately there weren't. Whether you apply sort of bulletproof or custom tires as well, and between the different tire types, there is no difference between the amount of grip that you have from each tire type, each wheel type. It makes no difference. You're not going to get quicker lap times regardless of what you use. But I also made a follow-up video about off-road wheels and why you needed off-road wheels. I'll leave all these links to the relevant links in the description down below. But basically it was all to do with the amount of tyre sidewall. Off-road wheels were the best, high-end tyres were the worst. And you'll be able to see this here. So we'll go through the different wheels, high-end, sports and SUV next. And you can see basically the amount, the sidewall is basically the distance between the rim on the inside of the tyre and the outside of the tyre. And as you can see, as soon as you get to the lowrider, the muscle and tuner wheels, that amount of sidewall on the tyre increases. And off-roads are the best for this. They have the highest amount of the most amount of sidewall on the tyre. And basically what that does is soaks up the bumps. But it's not for every car in the game. So to figure this out and to understand why this all happens, we need to go back to the spreadsheet, and this is featured in many previous videos before. I'll obviously leave a link to it in the description. This contains all of the information about car performance directly from the handling files that the game uses to the game actually uses all this information to determine car performance. And what we're interested in is the handling stats that you can see here. That is going to be the key part about this. So basically there's a certain part of these handling file numbers that we are interested in the most, and I'm going to zoom in on it here. It's basically this section here where it's in the fifth digit along, and if a value of 2 is there, basically it means tires can clip. As you can see there, fifth digit, number 2, tires can clip. So what does that mean? Well, I'm going to explain that later on, but basically it means that off-road tires will help. As you can see here with the Feltzer, you have to read these from right to left. That's the only thing. So the fifth digit here, reading from right to left, is a value of 2. Now that means that the Feltzer gains a benefit from having off-road wheels. That tires can clip aspect of the Feltzer means that when you put off-road wheels on, you will have a much smoother ride than if you didn't put off-road wheels on. Now there are only a very small number of vehicles that this applies for. As you can see, the 2 Jesters that applies to as well, and the 2 Massacros, they have a value of 2 in that fifth digit reading from right to left. But all of the other vehicles in the sports class, all of the other cars, don't have this value. They don't have that, and none of them gain any benefit from having off-road wheels. You could put high-end wheels on an Elegy and it would be exactly the same as putting off-road wheels on an Elegy. It makes no difference whatsoever. And again, these are the only vehicles that have this value. These are the only vehicles in the game that have that 5th digit being 2, and the only vehicles where having off-road wheels will actually help you out. Only 18 different vehicles in the game, and some of them you can't even use in a race or upgrade anyway. So what does this mean? Tyres can clip. What does that actually mean, and why does it mean that off-road wheels can help? Well, basically it means that the tyre itself can sink underground, essentially. Now it's a subtle thing, but it essentially means that it recognizes the difference between the outside of the rim and the outside of the tyre, and it absorbs bumps better because of that. If a vehicle doesn't have this handling statistic, it doesn't have this characteristic, it basically means that it acts as the entire tyre being a solid object, being the full, as if it's the full rim, if you like. So it doesn't matter where the amount of sidewall that you have with the tyre, it makes no difference because it acts as if it's a solid item, essentially. So when you go over a bump, when a car doesn't have this aspect, you will feel that bump a hell of a lot more than when a car does have this aspect and has a lot of sidewall between the rim, because essentially it acts as if the outside of the tyre is further into the tyre than what it actually is, and the more sidewall that you have on the tyre allows that bump to be absorbed, because the tyre can clip under the ground a little bit, and therefore when you go over a bump, it doesn't have as much of a jarring effect on the car as what it normally would with a standard tyre. So that's getting down into it. We going back to when we actually figured out about off-road wheels, we didn't have all of this information available. So you try it out with a few vehicles and it looks okay, and it seems to work. So you put off-road tyres on everything, and then you don't really think about it anymore. At least we certainly didn't. That's generally how it goes. But now that we have all of this information, we can look into these things and find out why these things happen, because nothing is just random. Nothing happens in the game if it's not programmed to happen in the game. And this is the aspect, this tyres can clip aspect, is what causes off-road wheels to be so useful to a certain amount of cars. And again, it's only a very small number of cars that in the sports class specifically, the 2 Jesters, the 2 Massacros and the Feltzer, and that's it. Those are the only sports cars in the game that get a benefit from off-road wheels, or by extension tuner wheels. Now just to point out again that tuner wheels, lowrider wheels, muscle wheels, they do help as well in these for these vehicles, but none of them help quite as much as off-road wheels, because off-road wheels have the most amount of sidewall. But there are only a very small number of vehicles where this actually applies, and this is something that we've only just recently thought of, and I have to thank Nismo for doing a lot of the legwork on this and finding this sort of thing out. For example, all of the coupes in the game, all of the SUVs, all of the sedans, all of the compacts, all of those cars don't have this. They don't have this aspect, so it doesn't matter what tyre you put on. Same for the muscle cars apart from the Nightshade. Same for all of the Sports Classics cars apart from the Stinger GT and the Sterling GT. And interestingly, that's the only difference really between the Stinger GT and the regular Stinger, is that the Stinger GT gains a little bit of performance. Well, it doesn't really gain any performance because you don't gain any extra traction or grip or anything, but it makes the Stinger GT a little bit easier over bumps if you put off-road tyres on it, compared to the regular Stinger, which doesn't have this aspect. So it's interesting that not all cars have this aspect, and it's interesting why some cars do and some cars don't. I can't really explain Rockstar's decision to allow some cars to do this and some cars not to do it. Obviously the Sanchez and the Enduro were two vehicles that could do that as well, the only vehicles in the motorbikes class that could do that, and that sort of makes sense because they off-road a little bit, and you need that extra stability over bumps. But then there were so many other off-road vehicles in that class that don't have it, and that's, for example, why the Bifter doesn't have that aspect, and that's why the Bifter is pretty horrible going over bumps and things like that. So every car is different as well going over bumps because of suspension geometry and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately the vast majority of cars can't actually be improved in that respect. Putting off-road tyres on a coupe, for example, putting off-road tyres on a Zion isn't going to change how it reacts over bumps. So for all of those vehicles, apart from those that I listed, you don't need to have off-road tyres on. You just don't need it. It's not going to make any difference. Just put whatever you want on that looks good. But obviously for the vehicles, if you do use any of the vehicles that were shown there, for example the Forza or the Jesters or the Massacro in the sports class, having off-road wheels will actually help you out because it will make you a lot more consistent, because you're not going to be reacting quite as bad over bumps as you normally would, and it would just make it a much smoother ride, as we've seen and as we all generally know about. And again, you can feel free to go in the description and have a look at the original video about that. But it's interesting, just a final point, that the top 4 supercars in the game all have this aspect. The Zentorno, the T20, the Osiris and the Turismo they are the top 4 supercars. The Entity is in there as well to be on the top 5, but that doesn't have this aspect. But yeah, it's interesting that we have that for those top 4 supercars, but we don't have it for any of the others. And so many cars that are quick that we don't have this for. It's just interesting that we even have this difference in the first place. But ultimately, that is the reason. That is the reason that off-road tires are so often used. But you don't need to have them on every car. There's only 18 vehicles in the game that you actually need to have off-road wheels on if you want the maximum performance, and I've listed them here, and I'll try to list them down in the description as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I hope it was helpful, and I hope it allows you to not bother putting off-road wheels on your vehicles apart from the 18 that were mentioned. But yeah, it's interesting now that we have more information to go on with this, and we now have an actual reason as to why off-road wheels help in some situations. But in most cases, for most vehicles, it doesn't matter what kind of tyre you have on, they will all be exactly the same. So thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. Leave all your thoughts down below if you want, and feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed and spread it around if it was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.